So let's make some adjustments to our current simulation. I'm going to switch to the low resolution so we can test this out faster. But analyzing the result we currently have, the main issue for me is that the initial blast, if we just look at this one, you'll see that the initial blast is huge and then they start to lose some energy. And I don't particularly appreciate that loss of energy, and the initial burst is definitely too big. The other thing we mentioned was the fact that it is slowing down a bit too fast. So that part is pretty easy. We just go to the pop track, and instead of using a hair resistant of 1, let's switch to 0.6. Next, regarding the blast, the impact blast, the main thing or the reason behind that is because in the beginning our character is pretty much static. So when it hits full force against an object that's not moving at all, so the impact is very big. As the simulation progresses, the character accelerates because it is being propelled towards the back. So the difference in velocity is not as big. So the impact, the ricochet isn't going to be as intense either. So a quick way for us to fix this, pretty easy, would be for us to just go to the set velocity, and we will animate these values instead of having a constant value from beginning to end. So I'm gonna turn this on, and we'll animate this to, let's say in the beginning, we can start with a minimum speed of 3, a maximum speed of 5. And then as it goes on, it accelerates even beyond what we had before. So let's go back to that 4-8 speed variation we actually had on the pop simulation. Okay, so this should solve the issue. Let's have a look at it. I'm gonna turn this on. I'm actually gonna be connecting this directly there so we can actually have a look at both things at the same time. This will be a pretty fast simulation because remember, we are using the low preset. This is something that I could accelerate as well. If you pre-cache the advection volume, you can save some of this time on the first simulation, but after that it's pretty fast. So I haven't gone through the process because it seems like it's not really worth the time or the disk space. It's still pretty fast to generate the initial volume. Okay, so I let the simulation go all the way to the end, and we can see that the timing isn't bad. I think it's still a reasonable timing to have that burst with a bit of a very small delay. It doesn't seem to be stopping as fast, so that's something that is solved. So it's not kind of going into the drag effect just as fast as before at least. And we can see the initial burst is not as exaggerated. Let's have a look at just those bursts. So the initial burst is not too much, and we don't feel it losing as much energy as before. That's something we can still accelerate. I think these last ones may still be a bit too weak, but they're actually, the blast is also losing energy, so in that case kind of makes sense. One thing we might consider is to stop emitting particles after a certain point, because we do feel like there's a blast. The blasts are continuously happening, like we have the last one around here, and by this point there isn't any blast coming in anymore, so we should kind of stop that after a certain point. So let's use maybe frame 1085, something like that. So what I'll do is I'll go inside the DOP network, and here the volume source, we can set an expression for the activation. So it should only be active while the dollar frame is lower than 1085. That'll stop the emission after that frame. And I think with these adjustments, we have a really cool effect that'll be a very nice addition to the blast we already created with the pop simulation. So I'm going to switch back to the high resolution settings, and I'll hit save to disk. Let me save the file first. I'll save to disk, and we'll be right back to have a look. So here we have the new simulation, both components at high resolution, and you can see here that they're kind of combined pretty well. Let's have a look at another camera. From the back, we have those bursts, those radial bursts appearing really well. I think everything is blending in seamlessly. We do stop having those radial bursts after a certain point. So the last one is around here, and then no longer. So maybe that last one is still a bit too strong. This one. Yeah, this one is a bit too late and too strong. I think they're still stopping a bit too fast for my taste, so I'm still going to do that adjustment. Those two small adjustments, and I'm going to call it pretty much ready to go. So those adjustments I was mentioning is making sure it doesn't stop as fast. So we had already reduced this to 0.6. Let's bring it down to 0.4. And regarding the volume source, I wanted to stop a bit sooner, so maybe 1080, maybe less, 78. Remember, this isn't immediate because they need to be emitted and go all that distance before they actually reach the target. So yeah, something like this should work. Go up, and I guess that's it. I'm gonna do a new cache, and after that we'll move on to another subject and continue to add more layers to this blast effect. So I'll just hit save to disk and see you on the next lesson.